Hi guys, and welcome to my review of the latest episode of Raw. So this episode kicked off with quite spectacular style, where we had basically CM Punk and AJ Styles opening the show. We basically had that AJ Styles was what CM Punk, sorry, was giving AJ Styles his flowers, saying how much they respected each other, but was kind of like, what the hell are you doing putting your career on the line against Gunther? This was basically, this all led to them having a match. And it was basically going to be for the heavyweight title. And then we were, and so straight away, you got that pop. You were like, oh my god, that is so big, that is so amazing. It's always like being part of maybe a running joke on Raw, where this was kind of made the main event, where say you kind of like have that sort of like running joke where it's sort of like, so you didn't have a main event before going live, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, this was such a this is such a good way to kind of create a real pop for the crowd, make a real kind of solid main event. But at the same time, once the set was about, you knew that this match had to end in a DQ, right? Because it was basically like, just because of the bookings that they've got. They're not gonna. There's no way that they're gonna have CM Punk lose a title to AJ, knowing that he's going into this retirement match against Gunther, and we've all kind of bought into the idea that AJ Styles is going to get retired. Like, there might not be, there might be that swerve, but we've all kind of like, are basically kind of like expecting AJ Styles to get retired at the Royal Rumble. So yeah, we knew that there wasn't going to be any real sense in taking the title of CM Punk to pull on AJ Styles. There was this narrative that if they could have put it on AJ Styles, but then it would have been for but then the match, against Gunther at Royal Rumble would have been for the title as well as his retirement. But then you kind of like, if you're keeping in the realm of kayfabe, you're going to go, well, why would AJ do that? Would they, would the management have to kind of like enforce that? And there isn't really enough time to lay down all of that kind of like little ifs and buts, because this is the last episode before we get to Royal Rumble. So yeah, it was just like, but at the same time, I don't think you could have had CM Punk win clean here, neither, because you kind of want AJ Styles to have some momentum going into that match against Gunther. So by default, working out how WWE work, when they have a match where they want to protect both people, more often than not, you're gonna have shenanigans. You're gonna have a DQ, right? So we kind of like knew that was going to be the case. We just, but it ended up being Finn Balor who ended up intercepting and causing the DQ and beating down CM Punk, and I am kind of like reserving judgment on this. I'll just see how it all plays out. But instinctively, yeah, in the moment, that aspect did bum me out a bit, because we had basically in the previous week, obviously we had CM Punk and Finn Balor have this amazing match. We had Finn Balor come out to his old music as he gets over pop. We've been talking about how just something simple like that just elevates somebody. And we had basically even got this little continuation of that throughout this episode of Raw, where we had some backstage segments earlier in the show between CM Punk and Finn Balor, and we got that sort of old babyface Finn Balor back. And we just kind of like turned him babyface and turned him heel again, kind of pretty much in the same show, pretty much. And it was basically just, yeah, like I said, we'll have to see how it goes, but just instinctively, yeah, I didn't like it because, like I said, we had got that little babyface tease of Finn Balor. We saw the pop that it was getting, and it's sort of like you just reverted it back to him being this kind of interfering heel, which has never really won him over with the crowd and never really kind of connected him with the crowd. So it just seems such a counterintuitive decision, but it just seemed like the more obvious route for Finn Balor was maybe for the Intercontinental title scene with Dominic Mysterio holding that, and you're gonna surely have this fallout of the Judgment Day at some point. I mean, well, I've been expecting it any week now, but hey, I've been expecting the fallout of the Judgment Day for about the past year or so. Do you know what I mean? Ever since you had like Finn Balor being like kind of like the Cheshire Cat kind of thing, and just in the backstage segments. But it's just sort of like, but yeah, like I said, so yeah, we got to come close now to them pulling the trigger on it. So that just seemed so it just seemed like a real counterintuitive decision. But yeah, yeah. I mean, I trust that WWE are kind of like for all about this, and so like have like an ace up their sleeve somewhere, but. We'll have to see how it goes, but yeah, just instinctively, it did suck the air out of things a bit. It did ruin that idea of a Finn Balor push for me. So we had the 6-women tag in. We had basically the team of Rio, as they're calling themselves now, and Stephanie Valkyrie taking on the women of the Judgment Day. This was just like another really really solid match, as you would expect from these 6 incredibly talented women. We had the return of Bron Breakker here. And this was this again was just great. There are the main thing about this was that we had Adam Pearce come out here. We basically had him reinstate Bron Breakker. We had confirmation that Bron Breakker was being put in the Royal Rumble. He also announced that the rest of the division were going to be in there. But yeah, we had basically throughout. This seemed to trigger, though. There were a number of moments in various matches here where matches broke out into brawls and no security came out. Not that it would be really significant, because we all know that WWE has the worst security ever. Like, since when have the WWE security ever successfully broken up a brawl? They haven't. So it's sort of like, but it is sort of, but obviously it's a narrative of there is running narrative of Adam Pearce is reluctant to interfere now, and this is all basically predicated on this mystery phone call that he's received, and it's all been like a little bit and I don't really, I'm at a bit of a loss on who it could be. I mean, a lot of people have been saying it Brock Lesnar. Obviously, you got Brock Lesnar with a Paul Heyman connection. So it kind of makes sense, but it also seems like it doesn't fully land with me, because I always go, like, obviously at the end of the day, Brock Lesnar would be a talent, and it's sort of like, so why would Adam Pearce necessarily be afraid of Brock Lesnar? You know, if Brock Lesnar had made threats against him, just like any talent had made threats against him, you go, well, you get out of here, you're fired. You know what I mean? Like, but it's just basically like, it just doesn't quite land with me why Adam Pearce would feel threatened by Brock Lesnar, but we'll kind of have to see. But I kind of gotta go with that's the person I'm expecting, because I seriously can't think of anyone else. I don't think it would be The Rock. Stephanie McMahon could have, but I think that would be a bit lame. I certainly don't think it's going to be he who will not be named. So I don't really know. I'm at a bit of a loss, to be honest with you, with that. But I'm intrigued to see how it all kind of like plays out. Yeah, it's again on to like maybe some of that shenanigans that we got. Like I said, this little segment with a vision and then being reinstated. This was kind of a segue to Austin Theory and Rey Mysterio having a match. It was a match of, Austin Theory had to win. It's still, I don't think, has done much for Austin Theory's place in the division. I think he still seems a bit kind of like out of place, and we've had this fan theory about him being kind of like a bit of a mole for Seth Rollins, and I think that would be the best case scenario in this. I think it's something that would just elevate everybody, because I've said before, I just don't think that there's anything about Austin Theory, and it's not his fault. It's just the way that his character's been pitched by WWE. That his character needs a complete 360, and I think that maybe turning him babyface, kind of could do that. And you could have, that massive swerve with him being a mole for Seth Rollins, and all of that. So I think it is a creative decision that could just elevate everybody. So I think that's kind of like what I'm hoping for anyway, because yeah, like I said, I think Austin Theory is a great talent. I think that he's, but yeah, I just think he needs the right character pitched. You know what I mean? And yeah, so we basically had a backstage promo with Natalia, or Natty Nehot, as we're getting that throwback to, and that's just really intriguing. I think it's great that we're getting back to that heel character, and we're basically just we're basically just going to essentially just use that feud, I'm guessing, to elevate Maxine Dupree just to the next level. So I think that's really intriguing. So we had a fatal four-way tag team between to determine the number one contenders for the tag team titles against the Usos. This fatal four-way was between Otis and Tozawa, the New Day, the Creeds, and the Americanos. And I feel mixed about this, right? Because I enjoyed this match, right? And I think it was just all good in-ring performances all round. I just think that, but I think that the fact that these were the four teams that were in contention here, I think it just accentuates how much the male tag team division on Raw is lacking at the minute, because I guess instinctively you could say, well, the New Day are the biggest star power, I guess, if you do pitch against the Usos, but then they're not in the best place, because you could have if you, let's say you had the New Day win this Fatal 4-Way and you had made them number one contenders to go against the Usos, but we're at a point at the minute where the Usos aren't appearing together on Raw because Jimmy's on paternity leave. So it's it's sort of like, in that sense, it was the right decision not to have a New Day win this, right? But there's a little bit of so we basically had Otis and Tozawa winning this, and I feel mixed because I love Otis and Tozawa, there was a part of me that just felt warm and fuzzy inside that they had become these number one contenders, but there was always a little critical part of your brain where you go, well, they're going to take on the Usos for number one contenders. Well, that's a bit lame, do you know what I mean? Like, it just needs to be a fresh blood. I mean, I'm sure in the different universe, if JD McDonough hadn't got injured, you could have inserted Finn Balor and JD McDonough into this as well, and that would have added, more spice. But so there is a little element where the male tag team division has just been cursed by bad luck in some respects, but yeah, it did accentuate an issue in the male tag team divisions of Raw, and hopefully they find a way to sort all of that out. We had a wonderful backstage segment in this episode as well between Becky Lynch and the Kabuki Warriors that just had me in hysterics. We had Becky Lynch doing this backstage interview. I was intervened by the Kabuki Warriors, and we had Kyrie saying basically, like, you're not ready for Oscar, and Becky Lynch was like, well, actually I am. I've beaten Oscar numerous times, so just interpret that for it. And Kyrie saying he just goes to interpreting Oscar's like, I know what she said. It just made me chuckle. It just just made me love the Kabuki Warriors and what they're kind of like doing there all the more. Just really like that backstage segment. So we had this other backstage segment between the Vision, and we were going to Logan Paul had basically proposed this plan where they were going to work together in the Royal Rumble to basically get Bron Breakker over the finishing line for him to become a winner. I suspect there is a little bit of a swerve there, but which I'll kind of get into in another video when I get to my Royal Rumble predictions. I believe that this little backstage segment was an intentional red herring. Maybe I think that it is going to make the Vision storyline in the Royal Rumble quite intriguing to watch, to see how it all kind of actually plays out with all four of them being in the Royal Rumble. I think the narrative they tell there could be quite intriguing though. So that'll be interesting. And then obviously that led into our main event with CM Punk against AJ Styles, which I think these two put on a bangers of a match as you would expect. Fantastic in-ring performances, but like I said, it was kind of very premeditated that this was going to end in a DQ. So you couldn't be disappointed by that, but yeah, like I said, the fact that it was Finn Balor, like I said, just didn't really necessarily land for me. So it did kind of suck the air out, and like I said, it did seem a bit counterintuitive. But we'll see how it all plays out. But on the whole, because it's such a shame as well, because up until that point, I was kind of like, damn, this is such another solid episode of Raw, So I think all in all, generally speaking, it was just that. It was a real where they had basically just, you know, met all the beats that they needed to do, and you know, and I think that it was just a solid match, a solid episode of Raw. But yeah, like I said, the ending to the main event did let me down a little bit. So, but yeah. So yeah, that pretty much wraps up. So thank you guys for taking the time to watch this video. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, don't forget to ring a bell for notifications. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Please feel free to let me know down in the comment section about what your own thoughts on this episode of Raw was. And yeah, until next time, I will see you guys on the next video. You guys take care.